Dr. Vic, thank you so much for being here on the Be Well, Be Safe, Be Happy, Eat Ice Cream podcast today. How the heck are you doing?
I'm doing absolutely amazing. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. I know we were talking a little bit off camera and I was looking at your profile and you have got some crazy stuff going on. And there's a lot of questions I just want to dive right into that I think are really going to help our listeners. And so the first one is that I myself personally am dying to know is why do we struggle in life?
Ooh, I love this.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a, and the answer is actually really simple, but the concept and the mechanisms behind it are actually what makes it so complex. Because in life, you've heard this before, anything that you resist persists, right?
Yes.
And so the act of resistance is what's going to cause all suffering in our life. It creates more headaches for us. It creates more struggles. It creates more, makes the journey harder because we're putting all this energy, right? It takes more energy to avoid pain than just to go through it. I remember when I was listening, going through my journey and understanding like relationships and men and just concepts of how us men think and whatnot. And it was always fascinating. A relationship coach one time was like, men will spend twice the amount of money to avoid a rejection than to just go through the rejection and learn from it. And I was like, wow, there's resistance again. And I just started to see a theme in this, like, oh my goodness. And I started looking at my life, like when I was worried so much, like, let's say you start a new business and financials aren't moving in as like they were. And I shared this in my first book, my journey of that. And I was like, so much fighting what I didn't want to have happen that actually created that. And instead I was like, what if I just let it go and didn't even focus and just put my energy where I wanted it to go? That would have been a game changer. And then I started playing with that and it actually does that. But it's that resistance that we create in our lives, that the thing that we're trying to hope it doesn't happen. And you get all these emotions, right? And it's the low vibration emotions. It's the ones that make your stomach turn and it gives you those knots in your stomach. It's those emotions that are what actually going to create more suffering. It doesn't have to be that way. I'm not saying that going through a hard time, a failure or something isn't going to be a smooth and beautiful process, but it doesn't have to be as bad. And if we learn to just go more with the flow and just be more open-minded and accepted, we don't suffer as much. Like the suffering is so much shorter. It's like what they say, I think the saying is like pain is temporary, but suffering is a choice. And it's like, it'll just be a painful experience rather than something that we continue to let perpetuate and keep going and keep going and keep going.
Let me ask you, because that's interesting. And I know a lot of people out there, you're saying what you resist persists. And I've also heard the saying, where the mind goes, the energy flows. And both of those are very true. But sometimes it's a little bit easier said than done. Let's take, for example, someone is really short on money. That's a huge energy zapper right there. And like thinking, oh, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to pay my bills? And they keep focusing on that. That energy is so intense. How do they do that? They shift to the opposite where I am abundant and I am, a money magnet attracting it to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. This comes up a lot. And it's one of those things where, mind goes, energy flows. I always say wherever your attention goes, energy is going to flow. And whenever energy flows, manifestation is going to grow. And to be a true alchemist, and I mean this from like a spiritual alchemist, somebody who can just, all you're doing is just moving your energy into where you want to create your life. If you can understand the fabric that it's called law of focus, and that is wherever you're putting your focus to, you're creating that life. And if you can really grasp that, if you can really hone in and understand that, then all of a sudden you can make the shift. But the reason why people don't is because the money it's not the money that, lack of money that's making us be a certain way. It's the low self-worth that we have about ourselves or what we think we are. It's the limited beliefs that we have. May it be about money itself. May it be that maybe it's the fear of success or fear of failure. It's more that's creating this emotional charge rather than being the money itself. Because I know for myself in my journey, when I went bankrupt at a certain point because money was just not coming in with my new business and with student loans and all this stuff. I could not. The path of breaking through wasn't going to happen in the next year, 2 or 3 years, and I was like, either I struggle and try, or I do this or I let my personal stuff go, and my business survives a little bit, and give it a lifeline, and then let's see what it could do from there. And but long story short, when I look back at my journey, it was being a fear of being a failure, someone who just failed. I went all out, did it. Look at this guy. He tried, look, he failed, this and that. And I saw myself that way. And then I had to change that story, because as soon as I became aware that it was a fear of failure, then I was like, hold on here, wait a minute, let me take a step back. And I was like, I'm just trying to figure this out. And I had to reframe the story in my head. I had to change how I was explaining that story. And once I started to do that, I said, this is what it's going to be. You have to commit. You have to go all in and say, this is what it's going to be. So whatever that belief is going to be, whatever that is, the energy you're going to focus on, you just got to shift it and put it into that. And you're going to go back and forth for a little bit, because your nervous system is so used to being conditioned a certain way. But once you can break away from that and you can really start feeding into that, it's a game changer. And I've seen it in my life where my business for the last 5 years, I didn't have to even think about growing my business, or, because there's ups and downs in any business. But like in the downs, I used to freak out about it. Then I get downs and I'm like, all right, this is just part of the process. We're going to cruise through this and not have an inkling or a worry in the world. And it always takes care of itself, because in my head, I know if I focus on that low, I'm going to see more of those down the road. But if I can just continue to keep my energy of what I can do right now to keep my energy moving forward, keep the business doing what it needs to do, and keep focusing on that long term, it's all going to work out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, absolutely. What you focus on is what appears in your reality. Let me ask, you said you had a fear of failure. What did you shift that mindset from fear of failure? I can't talk today. To what did you shift it to? Like excited about success or growth, or what was the opposite that you shift your mindset to there?
Failure is just one more step closer to the greatness that I want to achieve. So what I started to do is, no matter how that failure is going to show up, no matter what that shortcoming or that challenge, that it's not the end of the world, and that whatever that is going to be, I'm going to learn and become better. It's going to help shape me, in other words. So I just had to look at how I seen failure and shifted my story on it. And so instead of freaking out that this is the end, that it's never, because sometimes we think that way, right? That's why we also get that emotion, is like, when we have the shortcomings in finances, we think that this is going to last forever. But we got to remember that it's just a speck of time that we're in at the moment. And if we can just see it that way, that's why I do a lot of my work is all long-term planning and vision work and stuff like that. Because if we get so hung up in the short term, it can mess us up drastically. I mean, this is where people get, like, what was it, 2008, 2009? I remember I had friends when the market tanked and all this stuff. People were getting so short-minded, right? Freaking out about what is. They lost out on the long term. And I had some friends who were actually thinking long term and saying, you know what, this is fine. It's, I still have a job. I still make money. Like they walked through the whole process, and they said, you know what, things are low right now. I'm going to go ahead and just continue to add into my account. I'll see if I can add a little more, since it's a little low, it's lower now, and just take advantage of that. And we'll see what happens. In a year and a half, they were already on a surplus of where they were before the drop. And now they're killing it. And so it's one of those things where that's the kind of concept when we look at things from long-term rather than get sucked into the short-term aspect.
So did your mind kind of oscillate back and forth for a while between fear of failure and then kind of, failure is just one step on the way to greatness and success? And how did you, I mean, they say like it's like a muscle, you got to train it and make it stronger. So did you just like, I don't know, affirmations, or how did you make that particular muscle stronger?
So I'll share a tip and trick that I share with a lot of my clients, that really, if you want to create transformation, it has to be a feeling, right? Because you can try to mentally trap it and your mind's going to trick you. I mean, it is so smart. It knows all your weaknesses. It knows everything, how to get around you and so forth. But the one thing the mind can't get around is feelings, because feelings are just, they're authentic, they're pure, and they're true. And so what I would do is, and it wasn't a one game shift. I go back and forth. It's going to happen that way because neurologically you've been so conditioned this way, and you have so many reactions to this and all this stuff that goes there, that we have to shift that over to a whole different direction. And it takes some time. And so, but what happened is, I just started to feel when I started to get that feeling of that fear of failure and those things, what I really tuned into my body. I used my body as a tool to feel, where does it show up? How does that feel? And a lot of times it's right above my stomach, where I'll get this like feeling, and it's a low, heavy, thick. It just doesn't, I feel icky. Right. And so I was like, okay, I got to become very aware of that feeling. And so when I started to, I was like, okay, because even if my mind's not thinking it, but I feel this way, I can be aware of where my vibration is. So from that point, then I said, okay, what's the state that I want to be in? What's the vibration feeling wise that I want to get to? And so I started to do energy work on myself, which is shift my energy into a higher vibe. And sometimes you can do this with, if you played sports and you've done something, there was a time in sports where everything was on you, pressure's on, and you did absolutely amazing. You go back and you think of that. That's a good feeling. Or it could be taking a test or an exam. It can be something in business. It can be a time in your life where you thought your things weren't going to work out and they ended up working out in your favor. Whatever that may be, that gives you that good feeling. And that is something that I will start to train myself on and focus there. And as soon as I get to that feeling, I just, okay, this is where I want to be. This is how I'm setting my day. This is my intention. I come back. Okay, fine. Reset, get my energy back. And so it just kind of keeps shifting my energy and the feeling I get to that higher vibration until the point where it was so hard, I couldn't go backwards as much. I couldn't get deep into those feelings as much anymore. It wouldn't overtake me, my mind, my thoughts, and so forth. And when you do that, you're actually projecting this vibe of higher vibration, which is going to allow you to attract more of what the life that you desire. So you're not so stuck in that lower feeling, because when you feel this low vibration, you're projecting that out into the world. And when you do that, all of a sudden, you're going to give your brain has to now look for things to associate to a link to show you that, yes, this is the feeling you're projecting. Look at here. We're going to give you reasons for that. And then the life and everything you're going to track to continue in that feeling. But if you can shift your feeling into a higher vibration, now all of a sudden the brain's going to start to look for reasons why you should have a higher vibration. So this is literally like you taking full control of your life just from the aspect of being aware of your emotions and the feelings that you feel within.
So I want to ask one more follow-up question with this, and then I want to move on. So it's kind of like, to use a metaphor, like a piano. You're learning to play the piano. You've got to show up and practice. And of course, the more you practice, the better you get. So you were showing up for yourself every day, literally, and practicing shifting this vibration. Now, this is a key for a lot of people. You were able to break through. You had some underlying reason why, a higher meaning and purpose, a why that I call it, that glue that holds everything together that allowed you to keep going. Most people don't have that. So what I want to ask you is, what was your why behind this? What was your motivating factor? And how can someone who is struggling with their why maybe get their why? Two-part question, I guess.
No, I love it. I love this question very much because, for me, it was growing up with not having money. I grew up in a very blue collar family, blue collar community. All the conversations was not about having money and struggle and all that. And I saw the relationship side, not just in my own parents, but other family members and friends, and seeing the argument about money and just the viewpoint of it. And I was like, I don't want to have, as a kid, you're not really logically, mentally looking at things. You're projecting and you're seeing how people's emotions are to things. And then you take that in as a truth. So I didn't want that for myself. That has been a driving factor into my life. Now, for those who may say, I don't have that type of experience. Well, then you go and look elsewhere, people who, I always like inspirational stories of people who were like homeless for 1, 2, 3 years. Like look up Steve Harvey, look at his story, look at Tyler Perry. You look at these gentlemen who have, and there's women out there too, but I'm just thinking of these two off the top of my head, where they have massive success now. But you hear their story and it is something that's like, crap, if they can do it, you can too. And sometimes for me, I even though I had this driving force, I still needed those stories too. It wasn't like my story alone gave me all the motivation. Sometimes I'm just like, maybe this is just what it is. And it's like, then you go listen to Steve Harvey's story and you're like, holy cow, or Tyler Perry, or others that have been out there who have been homeless and all of a sudden now they have massive success. It gives you different perspective, and you have to understand this principle that if someone else can do it, so can you. There's not like there's a difference between the other person that has some special gift and or they're just whatever it may be. We're all very similar in a lot of ways. We do have our unique gifts that are different for each of us, but that's just one of the things that I utilized in my life to not only just with my own story, but even using others to keep propelling forward.
So more of the story there, if you're listening, find an inspiring story and stick to it and use that to draw motivation from, to go from who you are to the person you want to be. Yeah, the Steve Harvey story is incredibly inspiring. 3 years homeless, living in his car. I've done that. I'm familiar with that. Okay, so I've got a couple more questions. I want to move on here. So the next question you had on your list was, and we've talked about this a lot already, but why should we all focus on mindset first?
Love this. Well, being a chiropractor, it's one of the things that all things start and end in the brain when it comes to one's health, because it controls all function. And the same thing is true for your life. Everything starts and ends with the mind. I can go many directions with this, but if you're looking at, if you have, and we kind of talked about this already a little bit too, but if, like, let's say you have a low or limited belief or mindset on when it comes to money, right? Let's just say money's bad. People have money or greedy, right? You have this projection in this perspective. How are you ever going to achieve money if you have that perspective? It's going to be the biggest energy block to hold you back. And this is why I like negative limited beliefs when it comes to money is a big one for a lot of people to really look and see if you have what you may have, because those can be the biggest blocks. But this can show up in many different things. If you have, let's say you don't like the idea that, and I had a little bit of this where it's like, if I become really successful, I'm going to have to take a lot of time away from my family. I'm going to have to sacrifice a lot. I don't know if I'm okay with sacrificing any of my time with my family. Why can't I have both? Right. But I was always told, nope, you're going to have to, go one way or other. And I would see a lot of successful people and they're always on the go, looking like just always busy. And I was like, I don't know if I want that. And I had to actually, again, this is coming back in the mind, right? It's a perspective. It's looking at a belief and looking at how life is. And so all of a sudden your life's going to be that way unless you change it. And then you have to change here first. The same thing is when you look at when it comes to creating the life you want. A lot of the work when I work with clients is a lot of vision work. You got to get into your mind's eye. There's another word for imagination, because you have to project out to the world what it is that you want. What is your life? What do you want to have your life look like? Right. And the reason why this is so critical, because if you can get the mind's eye to project, and you can be very crystal clear with this, you've just done a ton of the bulk work to create the life that you desire. Because when you look at the aspect of vision, when you look at the aspect of tapping into the mind's eye, the brain cannot tell the difference between what you create in your imagination and what's real. Right. And I share this in one of my ebooks that I called The Power of Visualization. And I talk about how the mind can literally alter matter, like literally physical matter. It can change because the body does in just life in general. The brain can't tell the difference. So this is why one of my most favorite reasons why you always want to tap into the mind first, because let's use that power. Let's use this law. Let's use this principle. Because when you can start to tap into, imagine tricking your brain to think, hey, this is the life I want to create. Here's the vision I'm going to keep putting that vision out there, these emotions and all these other things that come with it. Now, all of a sudden, it's training your eyes to start to look for that. And what that means is you're going to start creating that in your physical world. Like Bob Proctor would say, what you hold in the mind's eye, what you hold in your mind, you're going to eventually hold in your hand. And so it's that how powerful it is to tap into the mind and use this. It's a simple tool to use. Just a couple of things I'm sharing here. And it's probably I call it the most legwork, because now you've dismantled probably like 50% of the work, because you're using vision and you're using your mind and other things like that to help you create the reality of what it is you desire. I mean, like if you like Steve Harvey, I could tell like I do. He always says like every rich person he's ever met has a vision board of some way, shape, or form. Now, I'm not saying I'm a huge advocate for vision boards, but they have a vision. If anything, if we could just take the board part out and just say they have a vision of some sort, he goes, there is not one that I don't know that doesn't have a vision of some sort, one way or another.
That was outstanding. Everything you just said. I'm gonna add one little caveat to that and see what you think. So, because I've been in this place where we try to use the mind to create the life we want, and that's the way to go. The caveat I would add for anyone listening is use the mind to create what you want based on where your North Star is guiding you. And that North Star is that internal feel, like you were talking about, that feeling or that intuition. For so long, I was just living in my head creating these vision boards, and it was being created from a place of fear and a place of ego. And I realized, wait a second, we got a North Star. I just heard this metaphor the other day. I loved it. What is your North Star? Where is your North Star guiding you? Tune into that North Star and then use your mind, everything that you just said. Focus on that, visualize that wherever that North Star is guiding you. What's your thoughts on that?
No, I love it because it's the why, right? Why is that, right? It's the what's the why behind all that, and you got to have that. I call this substance in the work that I do, because you can have a great vision, but how do you know, are you being conditioned by what vision you want to create, right? It has to come from you. It has to come from what you want to create, what's important to you, what do you value, what are the things that matter the most to you. And once you tap into that, now you're making it more authentic. And now this will also add to the mix when it comes to creating that life, because it just becomes easier. I will never say it's easy, but it definitely becomes a lot easier when you utilize that North Star or that why and get into that deeper substance stuff.
Yeah, and it definitely becomes, yeah, I wouldn't say easy, but definitely easier. Instead of the door being locked, the door is already open for you, is another metaphor that I like to use. This is good stuff. I wish I could have you for a couple hours today, but let me go on to the next question here. What is the first thing to create the life you would like to experience?
So, what's the first thing that I would like to create for my life experience?
That's the question from your profile page. Yeah, I just copied it directly there. Yeah.
All right, cool. So the thing that I like to create for my own, I think we kind of already tapped into this, but I'll share it again too. It's when we look at your life experience, the thing, you're always in a state of creation. You're always in a state of, the law of attraction is always working regardless. Like whether you believe it or you don't, whatever it may be, it is always working. The law of cause and effect is always playing a role. You're always projecting out, and every action has a reaction. So this is always coming. So for me, when it comes to creating my life experience and what I'm creating every single day is going to come from, again, managing back to the energy is where I would take this to. And again, like I said, we kind of talked a little bit about this, but just to clarify that deeper, it's being aware of the energy field of what you're sharing every single day and every single aspect. Because when you start to do that and realize that, whether we use vision, whether you use all these different aspects that we kind of already shared about here, it's the daily stuff of doing it. I call it the grind and hustle. When you're looking at the grind and hustle of life and you want to create that in your life, a lot of people think it's, I got to overwork. I got to keep going hard. I got to burn myself out every single day just to show that, hey, I'm doing this type of work. But in reality, the more the grind and the hustle, in my opinion, which is even harder, is focusing on where your energy is every day, because it's not always going to be in a great place. And you always have to make sure that if you can keep that centered and keep it where you want it to be, that is going to create the life experience of what it is you desire to manifest or to create, to whatever that is. And that can be just for the day, which I talk a lot about that. We're setting the tone every single day so you can set the intention of what you want to create. Because if you don't do that, then you have, I call it the matrix, but it can be whatever you like to call it, where the matrix will influence and plan the day for you rather than you planning and setting your day.
That's fat. I just got goosebumps. I just got a chill down my spine. I need to go and watch that movie, The Matrix, too. It's funny. I was just seeing some previews. Oh, I just saw something called The Hero's Journey. Have you heard of that? Where they talked about the Matrix.
I know Hero's Journey, Joseph Campbell. I think that's the one who is it. Yeah, right.
Yeah, Joseph Campbell. Yeah. So he mentioned the Matrix again. I haven't seen that movie, but need to go watch it. Okay, last question, and I absolutely love this question. I think folks are going to get a lot out of this one. Why is the darkness our greatest ally?
I love this question. We as humans, we fear the dark in some way. Now you may say dark. I don't have a fear of darkness. Well, it could be a challenge, an obstacle, failure, whatever it is, the things that we kind of discussed. But the darkness is something that we run away from. But in reality, when you really look at your life, and if you look at anybody's life, you'll always see that their darkness was their greatest point in life, their greatest success, their greatest ahas. For me, my dark night of the soul was one of my biggest growths I've ever experienced in my life. And it's one of those things where when we start to not fear, again, that fear creates resistance, which makes us only experience more of it. When we start to let go and just say, what if everything is always good in my life, everything's always good, everybody wins, nobody ever loses in life. Now, some people like to say, that's not 100% true, Doc. I'll be like, I can look at that in many different ways, even though deep emotional stuff, and there's always a gain somewhere. You just have to shift and look at it, and it'll be there. But the darkness, the truth about the darkness is that it's our greatest ally, because it allows us to it shows us the strength and the truth and the power of our light. You see, a candle light is not that great when you're in a well-lit room. You can't really see the power of that candle, the little flame. But if you go in a pitch black room and you turn on that same candle, you can see how powerful it really is and how much it can really light up a room. And that's us. And we can't really discover our light, our gift, our truth, our power, our wisdom, our things that we have within us unless we go into the darkness and then go. And from there, it will reveal to us what we have to. And this darkness can be sometimes when you go through a hard time, the darkness is going to reveal what you have to work on. Like sometimes we want to achieve great things right in our life. And we're trying to go up, following a North Star, doing all that stuff. Yeah. But yet at the end of the day, the universe is like, that's great, but we're going to have to go into the darkness to do the work. And if you look, when you plant a seed into the ground, it has to go in darkness and it births from the darkness. We came from the darkness. Stars, you can't appreciate stars unless they have a black background or a very, very dark backdrop so you can see that and appreciate it. And so the darkness is always there to support you every step of the way and help you show what it is you need to find deeper within. It's not that we have to get better. You don't get better. You already have everything within. You just got to you got to go deep within to find what is this other stuff you have. And then when you come out to the other side, you realize something more about the power or the light of who you are, which helps you level up to another level to achieve, attract, and so much more in your life.
So the darkness can be fear, it can be anxiety, depression. What are some other ones? Self-doubt. I know those are some big ones. Scarcity mindset. And I love what you're saying, Dr. Vic, that those issues force us to look inside. And I know this is probably an old cliche, but this really is an internal journey. It's not an external journey in our mind, but it's an internal journey that starts in our spirit, our heart, our North Star. And the mind creates some of those things, but it's the darkness that allows us to go in.
Totally. I mean, it's like this one statement I always used to hear, like people praying, God, help me, give me strength. God, give me this. God's not going to give you strength. The universe is not going to give it to you. But what they will do is they'll put a circumstance in, bring up a circumstance to you to where you're going to have to go dig deep within to find your strength. And sometimes you may miss it the first or the second time, but eventually you're going to be like, I'm tired of this. I just have to figure out, I can't, no one's going to help me. I got to figure it out myself. And then all of a sudden there comes a moment where you tap into your strength and you go through that. And then all of a sudden you're a little stronger on the other side.
Awesome. Good stuff. Dr. Vic, if someone wants to get a hold of you or work with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, you can. The best way to get a hold of me is my website, empoweryourreality.com. Okay. Right at the top, I got a free ebook on the power of visualization, and all my socials are up there. And you can get access to my podcast on there, and everything that I'm up to, everything that I'm doing, where all my connections are, you can find it all at the top of my website.
Okay. And just real quick, also, what's the name of your podcast? I know what it is, but for our listeners, what's the name of your podcast?
Sorry. Yeah. My podcast is called The Mindful Experiment. And we talk everything that relates to the mind and life and all in between.
Okay. And for the good of the record, we've said a lot of good stuff today already. I'm just tickled that you were able to come on the podcast. Is there anything else for the good of the record before we sign off here that you would like to say?
One thing I always like to share is that, and I kind of said this already a little bit before, is that in life, if you can really truly see that life in the universe, God, Allah, whatever you want to call it, is always there to support you and help you and give you what you need, and no matter what it is. Once you come from that place, and I know this was important for me because I had to see that no one's out here to get me. Actually, the universe, God, and all that's there to support me. And once you could come from that, it just lowers the bar of resistance even more to where you can trust life and what shows up more. And when you can do that, it just makes things a lot easier. And I could tell you, ever since I've done that in my life, probably like 6-7 years ago, I started to surrender to that. The wisdom and the knowledge that has come and the things I needed to learn. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to read a book and this is what I think I need. No, it was like deep core wisdom stuff that helped me transcend in my life and helped me get to higher levels of where I wanted to go. So that's what I would say, that the universe is always there to have your back no matter what.
So true. So true. This is exactly what I needed to hear today. And as soon as we're done here, we'll talk off camera a little bit. But again, Dr. Victor Manzo, empoweryourreality.com. Dr. Vic, I appreciate so much you being here today. This has been a goosebump, chilling session. This was meant to be for me. And again,
awesome.
Yeah, if you're listening here, check out his podcast. What was it again, Dr. Vic?
The mindful experiment.
The mindful the mindful experience. And probably you could find it on Apple or wherever you listen to podcasts. So do me a favor, if you're there, give him a 5-star review and leave him a review. And if you're enjoying this podcast here today, hit that subscribe button for both of us and leave me a 5-star review. I would certainly love to hear from you. Thank you again so much for being here. Definitely appreciate it. We would not be doing what we were doing without you, the listeners. So thank you again. And as always, as I say, this is Coach Brad. Until next time, be well, be safe, be happy, eat ice cream. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next time.